11 to 20, and I have to say it's not been plain sailing. Difficult second album. It was round about roll 10 where I was wandering, and I'll talk about wandering in a minute because that's an important part of the process, but I was wandering and I just wasn't getting anything, no portraits at all, for days and days and days. And I think having this project, this little sort of aim to complete these rolls and get them sent off is maybe putting the pressure on a little bit. So I've shot 5 rolls, and some of them I know are going to be good, are quite good, but I just don't know if they're quite what the first batch was. But I have to be okay with that. It's part of the process, not everything's going to be brilliant. So the good thing about breaking your project up, if you've got a project, is that you can look at what you've done before, and it's not such a long journey to get to the end. You can recognise that actually there are good shots there, there's milestones there, and it can give you the boost you need to keep going. So that's one of the reasons I break it up into the chapters. Now this time I'm halfway through this second chapter, and there are images in there. Maybe the feeling inside, they're not quite the height of what I got the first one, but there are good images in there. And when I got the next back, or when I looked back at the original batch, it actually gave me a boost. And that night, just the other night there, last night, I went out and I shot 3 portraits. So there's a portrait of a little boy on a bike that I think is going to be good. There's also another shot of a boy carrying shopping, and I think that's going to be good. So there's definitely good portraits in there, and I've got another 5 rolls to go. So by the time that you see this video, those rolls will be shot. I have no idea what's going to be on them, but that is what makes it exciting. So at the beginning of this video, I had shot a couple of frames of the second batch, and to be honest, I was feeling a bit nervous about it. The first batch, there was 2 images in particular that were strong. I knew they were strong, but the response to the first image of James and Brian was amazing, and it made me a little bit nervous again, because I thought, okay, well there's a really strong shot. Will I ever get a strong shot like that again in the whole project? So there's all these kind of thoughts going through the head, and the last time I spoke to you, I had shot a couple of rolls, and I really didn't think I had anything very strong. So now I've photographed all of those rolls, the second batch, and I've got some good news. There's a couple of good images. So there were a few, I'm going to start that again. Oh no. So there were a few shots that were okay, good shots, decent portraits, but just didn't have that spark that some of the ones before had, until I photographed Bob. Now, I had difficulty with this shoot. I didn't tell Bob that at the time, but the way I photograph is I meet people in the street and I stop them there and then and ask if I can photograph them. But this one was slightly different. So I was on Instagram and I saw a tag of Govanhill, and it was tagged Jim the Barber's in Govanhill, and that's a place I used to get my hair cut too. And there was this man with this bowl cut, and I hadn't seen hair like that since I was born, way back. And I just thought, wow, that's amazing. So I contacted Bob just through Instagram and asked would he be up for a shoot, if I could meet him. And I influenced the shoot more than I should have, or more than I would like to have. And I asked Bob to wear this 70s gear that I had seen him in. So when I met Bob, he looked brilliant, but it just looked a little bit theatrical for the type of photographs I do, just off the street. The outfit I loved the outfit, but just to tie in with the other images, that kind of on the street feel, it just felt a little bit too set up and theatrical. During the shoot, there's lots of conversation, and I was talking to Bob about all sorts of things, fashion, music, and we got into the subject of why the bowl cut, why the haircut. And Bob talked about how that time of his life, the 70s, was a very special time. And although he's not ignorant to the the tough times, he's very realistic about how that time period was not ideal. But there's something about that period of time that just brings back this kind of nostalgic feeling and a feeling of happiness. And so there was a moment where I thought, you know, this is Bob reflecting on that time period. Not this time, but somewhere else. And at that time, when he was talking about it, he was somewhere else. So I asked Bob to close his eyes and just to think about that time period. And that was the moment that I hit the shutter. And that's a shot of Bob. It's funny how sometimes little themes develop unintentionally. So, first batch, I had photographed Frances getting her hair done outside the hairdresser, and then all of a sudden we've got Bob with this magnificent bowl cut. I don't know what it is, but maybe you start tuning in a little bit more to those similar things. So I'm walking down the street, Cathcart Road, and it's a sunny day, and I see someone across the street leaning on a barrier outside a hairdresser's. And he looked interesting. Something was different. He was wearing the gown, and the hair was really, really dark. So I'm across the street, my eyesight isn't brilliant, and I'm thinking, there's a shot. So I start walking over, and the hairdresser sees me walking over the camera, and he's saying to me, photograph him. Of course, that's my intention. But I'm not going to take a sneaky shot. So I had to approach Ziggy and ask Ziggy if he would be up for a photograph. Now, I wasn't fully expecting him to say yes, because he was mid getting his hair dyed with this jet black hair dye. But he was brilliant, and he agreed to the photograph. So I just moved Ziggy round the corner. There was a black wall, the gown was black, and his hair was jet black, and I thought this would be perfect, just a plain background. Started photographing Ziggy. Now, Ziggy was just the best personality. It was just a barrel of laughs. He's a bus driver. At the same time, a bus pulled up with another driver that he knows, and the driver was slagging him off, and Ziggy was just taking it in his stride. He was brilliant. And in many ways, I love this photograph that I've managed to get of Ziggy, but I have to say I don't think it reflects his personality. I asked Ziggy, I'm saying to him, don't smile. Just look straight into the camera, because I'm trying to focus and all of that. I think the shot of Ziggy could have been a shot of him just with a massive hearty laugh. I still love the shot. One of my favourites from this batch. But perhaps I could have pushed it a little bit more or captured that moment a little bit better. So the final roll of batch 2, roll 20. I'm finding myself, when it gets to the last rolls, I just want to send them away and get them processed. So I'm photographing for the sake of it sometimes. This is when doubts come into your mind and all sorts of things happen. So I was walking down Allison Street. Now, Allison Street in Govanhill is a brilliant street. It's full of butchers, fruit shops, very busy. So I'm walking down Allison Street, and I notice a butcher. I had a funny moment of hesitation. I started questioning myself, should I ask him, should I not? The video camera was there, and I thought to myself, well, how will this look if he says no? And so I had to say, well, wait a minute, I had to just refocus, and no, I decided I'm going to ask, and Nisar said yes, and it was all good, and I think it was only maybe 5 frames that I had left of that roll. And then the shot in my mind was good because he looked good. But because I'm photographing portrait after portrait, I'm starting to think that maybe I need to break that up a little bit. And I noticed Nisar had this glove, and it was a glove of chainmail because he's chopping chickens and with really, really sharp knives. And so it's the way I shoot is I've always got to ask myself a question. What is it I love about that person? And it's a question that I ask instantaneously, very quickly, in my head, that I've got to come up with an answer right away. Because I've got to ask myself, well, what's drawn me to the subject? So that was one of the things that drew me. It was this kind of almost medieval looking glove of chainmail. And so I thought, well, actually, I need to photograph that too. So at the very end, I had one frame left, and I thought, I'm going to photograph the glove. And I did. Nassar didn't have a lot of time, he's working, so I had to work quickly. And I just didn't think it would be very good. But looking at it now that I've seen it, I think it's opened an opportunity where maybe it's not just a batch of 100 portraits, but maybe I need to give the project a little bit of breathing space by introducing some still lifes or some details. But who knows? We'll see what happens. It's all very open, and that the project will develop as time goes on. There's the second batch, up to row 20. Looking back on the images, have I got an image that's as strong as the first batch? Maybe not, but as a group of images, there's definitely strong portraits in there. And as a batch, they seem to work. Quite a lot of diversity in these images as well, which is good. So, again, what do you think? Maybe you'll have your favourites, and maybe some just don't connect with you at all. But that's how the project will go. There's going to be ones that will stand out. I know that personally as well. So again, very, very interested to see what will come. I've no idea. Hopefully, we'll get there. But definitely, we're on the way to 100 portraits or 100 rolls. Here we go.